Hey everyone, welcome to the 467th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Jason Apple, Ben Donovan, and Matt Mendoza. I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Enlow. Today we've got Pete Chatmon on the show. He's a fellow podcaster and filmmaker with an incredible resume. His show is called Let's Shoot. He just did a live show at Dynasty Typewriter where he had an awesome panel with a bunch of people from Yellowjackets, which is one of the many, many shows that he directs for, including, I'm going to go super fast, Ghosts, Chicago Fire, Interior Chinatown, NCIS Origins, High Potential, Reasonable Doubt, Unprisoned, Dead Boy Detectives, Minx, Fatal Attraction, American Auto, Grey's Anatomy, Flight Attendant, Long Slow Exhale, Blackish, You, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's halfway down his list. The Mythic Quest,
needless
Station
to
19,
say,
so many awesome, prestigious shows.
He's
really
a working
cool.
director, and he told us this off the mic, but I don't think he'd care. With the industry contracting, which all the TV directors we talk to say is definitely a real thing, just like less TV directing jobs.
There's
the fact that
fewer jobs out there. Yeah.
He's like one of the few that gets to shoot multiple TV episodes a year. So lucky man, very talented as well and well-deserving. But we talked about, because he's been on the show before, we kind of talked about a topic I've been wanting to talk about, which was honest feedback, like when and if you should give honest feedback to people, especially unsolicited feedback, and how to react when you receive honest feedback. And Matt, the reason I brought this up on the podcast is because I thought it would be a good excuse to let you know that I think you're not shaving your neck enough. There's a lot of extra hairs there. And
that's true. That's true.
I've
been traveling. I didn't bring my razor with me. I should have shaved.
A lot of people have been telling me that it's weird.
Yeah. Just like the little neck beard. I need to tighten it up a little bit. That's true. Enough about my neck beard, though. This is a great episode. I think it was really fun. It's great to have a guest back because, we've just seen Pete's career explode over the years. He's really fun to talk to. He's really easy to talk to. And I think he relishes talking about directing in a deep and meaningful way, which is why he has a podcast and why we have one too. So it was a delight to dig in with him. I think he had a great perspective. I think I learned a lot about myself, and I bet you will too.
Before we talk to Pete, Matt, you just came back from a shoot, and I've been dying to know, how did it go working on that lately?
It was good. It was really fun. I can't talk about the details too much because the talent that I've worked with has been announced.
Would kick your ass.
Yeah, they could, I'm sure. But there was a funny thing that I've been doing for years and years and years, but I don't think we've ever talked about in the show, and I'm curious with you.
Using your phone while you pee?
I use my phone while I pee. No, I can say this shoot was with athletes, right? But
your specialty.
It apply. I do a lot of sports for a guy who doesn't know a thing about sports. And it is nice because both of these people were superstars and I was not intimidated or starstruck in any way, shape or form. Yeah. Like I called my friends who were fans of, I guess I can say it's baseball, who were fans of them. And I was like, oh, hey, I'm working with these people here. I had some ideas. What are they, would they like to do this? Is this funny? Is there stuff in their background I can incorporate into that? And one of my friends was like, oh, I love these players. Like one of them is in all 5 of my fantasy leagues, like top pick sort of thing.
And
our
7
gaffer,
of the last 9 nights, he's been in my dreams.
Yeah. Our gaffer was a huge fan and was playing it cool. And we had a point where he had to, we needed someone to throw pitch balls to get shots of him hitting balls out of the park. And so we had the gaffer do it and he had a blast. It was special. It was and also everyone knew it. So it was a really special moment for everyone to be like, oh, our jobs are cool. This is really fun. The crew was awesome also, anyway. Yeah. It's out of town. It was really a treat.
I think it's cool when I work with this first AD, Kevin Brady, that's been an AD for 60 years. I don't know. He's been in the business forever. And he's still whenever there's a celebrity on set, he still kind of gets a little excited,
It's fun.
And I feel like that's part of the fun of this industry.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and with athletes, when you're like, hey, can you do the thing you're famous for doing? And then you see them do it without, we were like, we need you to hit a home run right there. And they were like, yep, got it. Pop. Right. And you're standing right next to them and you're like, oh, right. This is an act of magic. It's so cool to see somebody slam dunk or to throw 50-yard or whatever it is, sprint, all that stuff. When you see it up close in particular,
the
it's really,
dude perfect 5 balls into 6 different goals.
Yeah, exactly. And then you high five your bros. Let's go. Anyway, so these guys are very cool. And I was asking them to do some very goofy things and to curry favor, to keep things light, and to show some vulnerability on the stuff that's especially cringy or corny. I'll do it.
Right.
I'll commit myself. I'll be
on
like,
camera.
I'm not on camera, but I am in front of these cool people and the whole crew. And, I have, you know.
And there's like a bunch of cheerleaders and like varsity players there watching you.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, it was a big crew. It was like, oh, okay. Like, and so I would say the line, give a line read, sing the silly song, whatever it may be. And when it's really a big ask,
you do it with your pants off.
I make the whole crew do it too.
No, you didn't, dude. Mm-hmm. What's the whole crew? Everyone?
Everyone. I was like,
give me an example.
Okay, so like I said, it's baseball, and they were like, I won't give away the specific joke, but like we sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and the player was kind of like, oh, like, how does that go exactly? Like, sing it for me. And I sang it a cappella in front of everyone.
Yeah, how many lyrics? Just the first. What did it sound like?
Take me out to the ball game. Yeah. It's embarrassing. I'm, doing it in front of thousands of people now. But yeah, so I had the whole crew do it.
To make it easier for you.
As an act of solidarity of like, hey, we're all doing this thing that's really silly and we're all going to be vulnerable. And, again, it was one of those things on commercials. It's really hard to make a crew feel cohesive quickly. And this one was lightning in a bottle. Also, I had the luxury of stepping into, it was an out of town job. I think everyone else knew each other very, very well. So like I'm borrowing the experience of this crew that's pretty tight knit. But it was one of those things that I did to kind of just like make everybody drop their guard and plan on being silly for the day. Do you ever do anything like that? Like, what are your moves if you're dealing with people who aren't used to being so vulnerable? Are there things you do to make them feel more comfortable?
I mean, I definitely like act out the parts, a lot. But yeah, something that like I love on set, but I'm really bad at requesting it is just music, like I love it if like someone has like a Bluetooth speaker and it's just like
100%.
Like the grip department is just playing some music, while they're setting up.
And Talent was smart enough. Talent asked for it a couple times, and I was like, that's a great idea, and then got distracted or whatever. And it makes a huge difference.
Because then, and I know Tom Morris does this, but then you can kind of just like be walking to the beat or doing a silly dance, or you can kind of just be goofy naturally. And then I do think maybe it kind of helps loosen. And I mean, I'm like, I do not enjoy dancing necessarily unless it's like, with my kids in the kitchen. But I find that, and I should be like, hey, can we have some Bluetooth speakers and just have like some music playing? But then, inevitably at some point the AD's like, hey, we got to hurry up, turn off that music. Who's got that music playing? And you're like, well, I kind of like the music.
Yeah.
But
I did have moments where I was like, can everyone hear me? Can we turn down Bad Bunny or whatever we're listening to,
Right. He is a Bad Bunny.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, and I working with athletes is not working with actors. So it's a different type of thing when you're asking them to kind of step out of their element. But yeah, no, I guess I just acted out, but I try to be cool, ask them about them. Like, where are you from? What are you doing? When's this? What kind of cleats you got?
Yeah. Sure.
Baseball stuff.
Yeah. Baseball stuff.
Yeah. See if you can hit this. Then I'll just throw like an orange at them. Anyhow, that's cool. Well, but I can't wait to see what you got these guys to do.
Nothing that silly, but just kind of like get them loose. Or do you ever do a shake it out?
I don't do a shake it out, but I've done like let's do 10 jumping jacks real quick. Or, I mean, with kids, it's like a totally different story. With kids, I just go totally bonkers and act, like just run around like they're my own kids.
Look, asking your crew to sing is maybe
HR is getting a call about that.
Yeah. Making them shake it out, I stand by for sure.
The whole crew.
The whole crew. Yep.
You make the whole crew shake it out.
The whole crew. Yeah. 100%.
On every shoot?
No, but when we need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I 100% stand by it. again, it's like solidarity of like, we're all doing different versions of the same job, getting loose just for a second, just saying, okay, we were doing something one way and now we're doing it totally different. And the vibes, we are shifting the vibes as a group, 100% endorsed.
Cool. Okay. Well,
Try it out.
maybe I'll
Oren.
try it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, before we talk to Pete, have you magic minded? Did you magic mind before you asked everyone to shake it out?
I honestly, I was like, should I go buy some? I have my next shipment is on its way.
Oh, you sucker.
And I was like, these are some big shoots. I want to do a great job. I absolutely would have traveled with them. But, as soon as they're here, I will be back on the train.
I had to just write like one more part of a treatment, but it was like the hardest part that I always put off till the end. It's the script breakdown where I kind of just write what you see on camera, which is like, it is the commercial. So it's kind of hard to figure out.
I kind of like to start with that.
Yeah.
Start with it, then do the other stuff, then come back to it.
The problem is when you haven't like figured it out yet at all, starting with it. And I just got briefed on it on Friday, due Monday. So I had just the weekend. And today I had like my final thing and I still hadn't written this one section. And so I grabbed the Magic Mind, the ashwagandha, the ceremonial grade matcha,
You just found your flow state immediately.
nootropics,
Cordyceps. Yeah.
cordyceps. And I took it and I was like, I will not look at Twitter. And then I looked at Twitter for like 10 minutes, but then
I
was like, no, what did I just say?
You're like,
yeah. Then I sat down and I wrote it and I think it came out pretty good.
Cool.
At least ChatGPT told me it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So
this is better than normal.
Yeah.
Have you been taking your Magic Mind, Oren?
No, but it's I like to inject it right before anything important, anything I need to focus on. And I've found it to be pretty effective. So yeah, if you want to check out Magic Mind, you can go to magicmind.com/shoot-it and you can get 45% off. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Your first order. So check it out. Let us know what you think. If you care about focus, deep thought, and being alert and awake, you should check it out.
Being ceremonial grade yourself.
Yeah. And especially if you want to do it in an all natural way, I believe, with a bunch of vitamins, then check it out. magicmind.com/shoot-it. And without any further ado, let's get into our chat with the man who invented chatting, Pete Chatmon. I read in Guinness Book of World Records, you're the workingest director in premium TV. I see you've got like so many episodes coming out this year. Ghosts, Yellowjackets, another Ghosts.
Pete, would you mind just like doing a show that's not cool? Like just like something really, really like lame, something really corny would make me feel a little better about myself, I guess is what I'm saying, Pete.
Let me see what I can do. It's funny though. And I'll say this because it was said to me, but I did a Chicago Fire and one of the actors on the first day, he came up to me and was like, you've done a lot of cool stuff. Why the fuck are you here? And I was like, first off, I was like, that's
You're
funny.
Like primetime network TV.
That's right.
It was the best icebreaker of all time. I was like, we're going to get along.
Yeah.
But like, I did that show and I learned, I could tell you, I could do a whole podcast on what I learned, like, which was really part of being there. Like, not to tangentialize here, but like, we burned down a barbershop and it was cool as hell, man. Like all the floorboards the baseboards are like 4 inches from the wall and they run propane pipes and everything in there has been fireproof. Like all the art on the wall is like metal. And like we had like notebooks and everything was metal. So you could just burn it. And they have a stage dedicated to building and burning down sets. And I was like,
I've seen it on the Universal Backlot Tour.
Pretty awesome.
It's the drop set. That's cool, man.
We have one of Matt's friends and a previous guest, Brenna Malloy, has directed like 9 episodes of Chicago Fire. And she just put on Instagram like a breakdown of, it wasn't Chicago Fire, it's this other show called On Call. And she posted like all her like diagrams of how the people come, like, each character and how they enter a place to do a raid. And
it's like cops on a raid. So it's like a formation of people. So like just kind of tracking each of them. And like there's a drone shot and then there's a snorri cam shot and like all of the choreography to it. It's pretty cool. Those shows, those like Chicago shows, like you have to learn so much about police work and firework and all this stuff just to
make it make sense, you know?
I kind of like want to be a firefighter now. It's on the list, you know, if this doesn't
well,
work
it's a
out.
good time to collect all the stuff firefighters are getting right now. My daughter just did a fundraiser at her school, and like a lot of it is going to like firefighters and first responders. And there's all these firefighters at the fundraiser, and it's cool. Like if you're a firefighter right now, you just get to hang out with all sorts of cool people.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you always have Dalmatians and fire trucks and stuff.
Poles, big trucks. Yeah.
Is there a place, sorry, we'll get to the topic in a second, but is there a place where you can just go slide down a fireman's pole? Because
it's called like a playground, dude.
I don't know of ones that have a great fire pole.
Well, they are pretty hazardous. Yeah. I don't know that there are many poles now, I guess.
But you can't just go to a fire station.
When you see one, you're not really, you kind of look at it like, that ain't like, that's kind of, I got to do that shit right. Like,
it is.
You gotta wrap around that pole perfect and dismount.
I guess it is like, if you ignore the pole, it is like jumping down a floor.
Yeah. Like and also there's just a hole in the floor. So like it would be easy to be like, hey, who wants hot dogs or whatever, and then just like pratfall your way down it for sure.
I would just Super Mario Brothers, just hit down and jump.
Yeah.
And maybe make it down there. Yeah. But so Pete, because you're back here and you've been on before and we've heard your amazing origin story, and you're doing so much amazing TV that is maybe too amazing for what we want to talk about, I thought we could talk about this topic that's been on my mind a lot recently, and it's about giving honest feedback.
Yeah. It's inspired by all the conversations Oren and I have had off the mic over the last 400 episodes or whatever.
You know, it's not inspired by that. Like Matt and I will, we pitch on a lot of things and we'll show each other treatments. And sometimes you want to hear something, and sometimes, and Matt and I have gotten pretty good at it. Matt will say, hey, like I'll show him something and he'll say, hey, do you want to hear some feedback? And I'm like,
right.
And what does that mean? You hate it?
Your answer is, it's predicated on like how much time you have to fix something.
Yeah. Like, don't give me feedback on something that's released out into the world.
I just emailed this to a movie star. I don't want notes. Just tell me it's great. Right. Versus like, I'm about to pitch in like 2 days. For sure, I have time to redo a GIF or rephrase something or whatever,
Yeah.
That's a great point.
That the famous like response to, like if you show somebody your movie, right, your indie film, and you're like, what'd you think? And they're like, oh, the cinematography is amazing. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. You're like, fuck.
No.
They don't like the movie.
The worst is, you made a movie. That's the worst. That's the worst.
It is true though.
You're about to say something.
No, I was, it's funny because I was talking, I get a lot of emails like, hey, can you watch this or check this out? And I'm thinking about what you're saying, because I always try and understand, what are you looking for right now? Because I can go in here and I can I just watched something and maybe this will ruffle your feathers or not, I don't know, but like they had like French overs in the car, and they took the headrest out and like,
oh sure, 100%.
I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
Wait, can you, sorry, just for our listeners that might not know, French over is
so rather than having the camera like on the side of people's faces, you've got the camera behind their heads, and you're doing your coverage, from one person to the other, but from behind them, as if you are kind of in the back seat, if it's this car scenario.
It's specific to when two people are facing the same direction, like they're sitting at a bar, or they're sitting in a car.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a cool shot, because it just feels like you're part of the scene as an audience member, from my estimation. But like, the minute I saw the headrest pulled, I was like, you pulled them because it helps the shot. And it looks wild because no one's been in a car without a headrest for 28 years.
Sure.
Right. It works in like a 1970s, right? Like kind of like
right.
Period.
Or, like if the car, if a shotgun is blown off both headrests, then now the shot works better. Right. That's fine.
Yeah. I always, in all my scripts, I always script in like shotgun blows up.
Yeah.
But early on.
Hey, I'm going to talk to you about something really important. Duck.
Yes.
Oh, as I was saying.
But I was like, where are you with this film before I lead with that?
Sure.
Then also there was like a really long credit sequence that was pretty awesome, but it was a short and it was very long. And so I was like, well, maybe, okay. Oh, it's already got it. And it's like, it already had a deal. The film had a deal. So like, you have a distribution deal for this short film. So my comment doesn't actually even mean anything. You know what I mean? So like half of it is subjective, and the other part of it is like, is it even fixable? Like to tell Oren, like, hey, what's with this thing when so-and-so actor is reading it this afternoon? It's like,
Well, Pete, if you want to email that filmmaker, if they have a good budget and they want me to VFX those headrests back in, I'm down, dude.
Yeah, you could swing it, I'm sure. I think part of what we're getting at, though, is that if you're good at taking notes, part of that, the way that you can get better at it is by setting people up to give you the sort of notes that you're looking for, right? So saying, like, hey, Pete, I'm really proud of this. So, we're going to go shoot some pickups. So everything's fair game. Or like, hey, we're pretty towards the end. I'm just looking for kind of edit notes, like, is this clear? Is that clear? Just kind of like structuring what sort of feedback you're looking for.
Yeah.
Instead of making somebody ask those clarification questions, I think helps get feedback that's actually useful to you one way or the other. Yeah. And it's totally okay to say like, hey, just tell me what you like about it. Like, hey, I need a victory lap. It's okay.
Yeah.
Especially only if you know the person very well. If you're like, oh man, Pete, I look up to you so much. We had coffee that one time. I'd love to send you this short film, but I need you just to tell me it's good.
Yeah.
Then that's maybe not a respectful use of your time,
And I come from the school of like, I actually want to hear what doesn't work from people.
Sure.
Because whatever's working, I'm likely to repeat it. But like, if you're like, hey, that thing you did in that scene, like, that's not really landing, or that stunt coverage is kind of like leaves a little to be desired. Like I would rather you give me 5 to 12 to 20 constructive things that I didn't land, because that's going to make me better. But I know a lot of folks, they get that and they're like, they get defeated because they're looking at it through the wrong lens.
Well, I think so obviously that's we're talking about honest feedback when you're asking for feedback. But the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is unsolicited honest feedback. Because as a filmmaker, look, all of us are trying to get better on every project and to evolve with the industry and the times and things, and stuff that worked 5 years ago maybe doesn't work today. And we want to hear from people like, hey, this thing was a little cheesy, or this is insensitive, or this is whatever. And this is a really bad example, but I just have it on my screen right now. I got a text from a production designer that I worked with a while ago. And they said to me, like they talked about getting a copy of the thing we worked on. But their last text to me was, and per your advice, I no longer hit my vape on client Zoom calls. And I was like, oh, I don't even remember giving this advice, but I'm happy that I gave it, because I could, this is a production designer I work with that does not live in LA. And so, I don't know how many more times I'll work with them in the near future. But they did this thing on the call with the client where there was a lot of art that we had to go through. And we had the client and the agency and everyone. And I was like, let's all get together on a call. And the entire time, this was the first time they met this production designer, they were just vaping and, and it just felt like, I don't mean to be prude or ultra conservative, but it just felt unprofessional to me. And it's like, I knew that they were good, they're talented and had great ideas and were like artistic, but I was feeling self-conscious that the people that hired me are going to feel like, oh, you hired this like kind of unprofessional person. And so
was like the vape cloud, like just filling up the window.
The vape cloud it wasn't that big, but it kind of gives like a little like a feeling of nervousness, yeah. And then we're going to do this and we're going to do this. Oh, you don't like that? Yeah. So maybe we'll try this and this, and I was like a little like embarrassed about the whole situation. And I said, hey, hey, I don't know you. This was the first time I was working with this person. I was like, I don't know you that well, but I think in what I'm feeling is that this is coming off weird. So maybe on the next call, if we have any other calls, we shouldn't do it. Is it cool if you just don't vape like while you're on the calls with the clients and the agency? And it's not the first time I've told a crew member that I notice how they're acting in front of the client and agency.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because I think people hire us and then we hire crew people. I know on TV, maybe it's a little different, but I know you've done a lot of other stuff too, Pete. And
would you have made that comment if you knew you didn't have potential meetings on the horizon where they might do it again?
I think so. And it's something I'm trying to do more and more. Like I just worked on a job this year where one of our gaffer basically was I had zero issues with them, but they kind of rubbed some people in production the wrong way. And the DP that I worked with, I was going to work with again. And I kind of just mentioned it to him. I was like, hey, just so you know, your gaffer kind of like pissed some people off. So I don't know if we should hire a different gaffer next time or if you want to talk to them about it. But it's like, I don't like having that tension on my sets, when a gaffer is fighting with production. It's just unnecessary. We're fighting so many other battles creatively that doesn't seem like something necessary. Have you guys had that, like crew members that you're like, oh, they did this thing and I'm not going to hire them again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm hearing though, Oren, is like, or rather what you're sparking in me is the acknowledgement that like directors we know we're the conduit between the crew and the studio or executives or client or brand or whatever, right? Like we're on Zoom calls a lot more than especially people who aren't department heads. Do you know what I mean? There's the people who are executing, who are in the trenches or doing that work. And it is a different lifestyle, right? And as a result, like if you were like with an art team and somebody was hitting a vape, none of us would blink. We wouldn't even, it wouldn't register. We wouldn't even think about it. You know what I mean? Like it's basically a construction site. We're all just working together. We're covered in paint. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
And I love that. I love that part of the job. But also that means that, sometimes you just have to remind them like, hey, there's a different way of communicating or a different set of expectations when it comes to, for lack of a better word, suits.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like if Pete had a general meeting.
Yeah, he wouldn't hit
showrunner
vapes and he wouldn't be covered in paint and he wouldn't have a Leatherman on his belt. You know what I mean? And that's what you should have if you're an art person,
Right.
Yeah. Pete, I'm curious because I think Oren and I are really mostly informed by the commercial work that we've been doing lately. Do you feel like that's true in TV as well?
I mean, yes. I that's why I asked that question. Like, if you knew you weren't going to see them again, would you? Because it shows great care, actually, on your part to even do that. Because I feel like what I've had happen a lot is like somebody will do something and I'll be like, oh, you're fucking bugging, and either A, it's cause for departure, and I'll give you two anecdotes, or B, like I had a thing with a DP on a show and it irked me all day long. And then the next day I was like, you know what? I've got to talk to this person because what's going to happen is I'm going to fly off the handle to other people seemingly because of the fact that I've been stewing about this event from the day before. And I'm trying to preserve, my image. But like the first thing I'll share is like, I remember I was on a show and we were talking to a costume designer and it was like, I heard them. I was like, hey, I need you to share the document of what everybody's wearing in the episode with the showrunner and the producers. And it had been an ongoing issue. It had not been happening and it's supposed to happen. But what was happening was they weren't doing it because they had what they wanted to do and they wanted to just shoehorn it and force it onto us because you can't do anything when it's Monday morning at 8 a.m. and they're fucking coming on set for the rehearsal. And so we were on a Zoom and I made the request. And as we were clicking off, I heard them say, I'm not doing that. And I was like, what? Right.
Sure.
And it was like, I was like, I'm pretty sure I heard that. And it put me in this weird position where I was like, I had to reach out to the guest director in a way where I was like, look, I hate to put you in this position, but like, did you hear that? Because like I'm about to go off on, you know what I mean? And they were like, no, I didn't hear it. And I was like, okay, I can't trust whether or not you're hedging too. You don't want to get in the middle of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And so like I went to the EPs and the showrunners and I was like, look, here's what happened. Like I'm ready to guns blaze. Cause like that was I was like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And they were like, blah, blah, we're not. I was like, okay, cool. And in about a few episodes later, that person was gone because we'd gone over budget because of them, right? But the thing where like I did talk to somebody, it was a DP who like we were setting up a shot. I knew there had been issues with them on prior episodes and I had been informed and, my spidey sense was up. And so I really gained I was like, this person's like really governing themselves. Like, I don't feel like they're being themselves, whatever. And so on the second to last day, I'm setting up a shot. I'm like, it's like, we're going to boom down from the chandelier and just kind of land in and over as the person walks the camera and turns around to talk to the people behind. And they're like, oh, well, we don't really do that kind of shot on the show. And I was like, and so I was like,
is that something from working in TV for so long that you hear a lot, or is that kind of rare?
well, here's the thing.
They do that.
I can make you do all the shots that you never do.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I want to be that guy, and so you don't hear it often, but when you hear it, it's like, where is this coming from? Who do you think you're talking to? And then,
sorry, I was gonna say, not to bring up your resume, Pete, but like, I think that jargon works if you're shooting a multicam sitcom. Do you know what I mean? But like, you're working in prestige TV, where like that the whole point is that they hire people like you to bring that level of style and flourish and fun. That's what makes an HBO show stand out.
right.
And like be cool, and what frankly like everyone is chasing at this point and has been chasing for like 10 or 15 years. You know what I mean? Like that's the whole point. Yeah. Sorry. So
but it's but it's also like from the textbook of cinematography. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is not a crazy shot. And he's like, oh, well, we keep the camera at eye level. And so, you know, I'm like, all right, like, I felt that you've been governing yourself for 12 days. And here we are on day 13, and you do that on the first scene. And I'm like, I fucking knew it. And so I was like, well, that's your next shot, and you're going to set it up right now. And I walked away, and then like all day long, I'm like, who are you talking? Like, you know, you just start.
And
you
guys did that shot?
Oh,
he was
yeah.
like,
no,
cool.
we did that shot.
Yeah.
And so then I'm just like,
did it make it into the episode?
It's the beginning of the scene. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, okay. And then you're like, you know, and I hate there's so many layers in here, but then like now you're making me do kind of what you're saying, Matt. Like, now I'm like on IMDb, and I'm like I've done 75 episodes of TV. You've shot 40. Like now you want to do that? Let's do this, right? And so, which is, to the people listening, this not even how I am, but like now you're making me like look at what's happening here.
Yeah.
And so the next day, and I'll wrap this up. You know, he comes over I text him because I know like there's a style to being on set, which is often passive aggressive wins. And so I'm like, hey, are you here? Can you meet me by Crafty? I want to talk real quick. Right. And so I'm like, look, man, you know, in 70 episodes of TV, I've never had a DP look me in my face and tell me that's not the show. Then I said, as a producing director, no director on a show that I've been on has ever told me that a producing director has looked them in the face. I mean, that a DP has looked them in the face and told them that's not the show. You should also know that I had dinner with the showrunners before we started shooting, and they told me to get my shots. So you doing that are not making this a welcome environment. And on top of it all, I could get nothing but shots that you think aren't the show, and you have to shoot them. So we've had a great run so far on this episode. We've got one day left, and it's going to be, you know, great. But I just have to tell you that right now, because I'm not going to get through today if I don't share this with you. And he was very apologetic, but then he was also, it's a much longer story because he tried to run up the ladder to like higher ups to get in front of thinking that I was going to take it to other people. And I was just having a man-to-man conversation with this person, and they ended up throwing themselves under the bus. But while also in that, you know, pursuit of playing defense, telling people that I was mad and angry. So trying to paint me out as the angry black man. And everybody was like, I know, Pete, that ain't what it is. Yeah. So that was very long-winded, but like,
no, it's perfect.
It's interesting.
Perfect.
And it's, that is like why I think this is interesting. Cause in every situation, especially in production where the stakes are high, the tension is high, the time is little, there's money on the line.
Less sleep too, right? You know, yeah.
And as a director, you're responsible for so many things, you know. It's very easy to blame the director for something not working, right?
Yeah.
You have to choose when something isn't when someone isn't exactly working the way that you prefer, do I not say anything and just avoid them in the future, right?
Mhm.
And keep the tension inside?
Mhm.
Or do I tell them what's bothering me? I hope that they take it well
Mhm.
and and risk the fact that the tension might be outside. That like I told a story where I had a DP that his whole crew like basically hated me for like a month because I had said some things, that he didn't like, and so that
On a podcast. I'm joking.
that's the balance that you have to figure out. But I try to, not to get too cheesy about this, but like I try to kind of golden rule it and think, if I was in their situation, would I want someone to tell me that what I'm doing is bothering them? And it's like, this is the same reason that if somebody has a food stuck in their teeth, even if I just met them, like I'm at a party and I'm just talking to them, I'll be like, hey, just so you know, you have like some food stuck in your teeth, or your tag is sticking out of your shirt, or you have toilet paper stuck to your foot, whatever. Like I'm very much the person that will say something because it's 100% out of me wanting someone to tell me like, hey, you got a giant piece of kale on your teeth. You look like an idiot.
Yeah. And I think in both of these anecdotes, whether it's, food in your teeth or, this DP crossed a line, right? The move is always just to pull him aside. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you only cross the line if it's French overs,
But but truly, like, there's a difference. Like, Pete, you could have been like, what? And like blew up and had that conversation in front of his entire crew and in front of that, like, and that would have been a very different decision. Do you know what I mean? I think we all probably have been around directors who are willing to like make a statement. You know what I mean?
I don't know if it would have been the wrong decision, to tell you the truth, though.
Sure.
But like, because I'm often thinking now, like, again, it sounds so damn pompous to be saying it, but like, it's like this new crossroads I'm at where I'm like, now half of what we're talking about is a bit of like keeping the peace and humoring people. And it's like, if I were to look at my time clock, if I'm humoring these motherfuckers for 30 minutes a day, right? Like, so they can feel good.
Yeah.
I'm not getting 2 shots. You know what I mean? And, or 2 takes. And is that what it's about? And I'm really weighing this almost every other episode where something happens and someone is like, I'm dealing more with their insecurity or their lack of experience, and it's getting in the way of like, would you, if you were an architect, would you not, build the house to code?
Sure.
Because the owner just has some stupid fucking questions.
I have this thing where I kind of recently, when I care about time a lot, obviously, I'll start out a conversation with like, hey, you're doing a great job. I love everything. If I don't mention something, it means I like it. But just for the sake of time, let's get into the things I don't like. Okay. Here's notes. Page 1, do this. Page 2, because it's like we have to hurry up. And if we try to please everyone and be like, oh, I love that you've been here and here and here, and this thing is so great, then we are, killing half the time, just like worrying about people's feelings. And not that we don't need to worry about people's feelings, but sometimes it's not always like the number one priority,
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of, I was on a shoot not that long ago where it was kind of a situation where I was in one half of the shoot, and then there was kind of like another half of like a different unit, let's say, kind of shooting at the other time. And I didn't really have anything to do with this other unit, and they were shooting totally different stuff. Our paths didn't really cross, but I could tell that they were like they were disorganized, basically, or just confused maybe. And I felt like if their shoot doesn't go well, it hurts mine, and vice versa. Do you know what I mean? If either of us were like trading talent back and forth and all of that stuff, and my producer, like, I would kind of catch things in the hallways or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, hey, do you need this or do you need that or whatever? And
hey, you guys want to take the lens cap off?
totally.
Whatever.
Or
It's
just
up
like
to you, but
just like, this might be a simpler way to do it, or like, do you need this art PA can help you out with that sort of stuff, And my producer was like, hey, there's nothing you can do about whether or not they do a good job. You know what I mean? Like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I think the spirit of that is 100% right. I was balancing that thing of like, yes, that's 100% true. I want them to do well just because that would be better than not. but also the ramifications of if they put talent in a bad mood, if they're running over, all of those things do have big impacts on my shoot. And so it was it was kind of a more extreme version of Pete, what you're talking about, of like humoring people, but with the ramifications of trying to get the job done. And so that's a thing I do think about for sure, is like being diplomatic to keep people on your side.
Yeah.
Right. But you don't want to err on the side of wasting time, coddling people, or taking the hit yourself. I've certainly kind of like, protected crew members before and then pulled them aside and been like, hey, this can't happen. What are you doing? And I've taken the heat for it in very tangible ways.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And been like, I should have just been like, hey, we talked about this. Why didn't you do it?
Yeah.
And then kept my reputation better off.
Untarnished.
Untarnished. Yeah.
I'm curious if you guys have ever had, we've all worked with bad actors, right?
Sure.
Like actors that just aren't delivering what we need from them. They had a great audition on tape and are on set now and are just not getting it. Or, everyone at monitors like, oh, it's not working. And you're like just struggling. And have you guys ever, after a shoot, given an actor feedback on something that they did? Like, hey, next time you go to set, you should really be off book, or just so you know, like you should like sometimes you overhear that an actor like went out last night, and was up partying till 2 a.m. or something, right? Like, and I bet, Pete, I feel like with you, it's different because you work with some people that are really part of the show, like have been on the show longer than you. And then you probably work with day players or just new there. And it's probably a different balancing act between those types of actors. But
that's interesting. That's a tough.
Or do you just never cast them again and that's it?
I've worked with number ones on call sheets who never know the lines when they show up, and it's just part of the process to allow retakes where they're not going to be usable. So build that into how you design your coverage. Shoot the other people first, whatever. And the thing that, I wish what you're talking about was more universally accepted as the way to operate. Because what happens a lot from my perspective in TV is that there's this thing that everyone hates, but no one says anything about.
Sure.
And then in your tone meeting, they want you to be the one to kind of address it and work some magic around it. And it's like, guys, I'm visiting.
They're like, hey, Pete, just so you know, so-and-so, your principal isn't going to know their lines. So build your coverage so that they're not on camera until they've learned it, basically. Right.
Or
you're saying in the tone meeting, like a writer will be like, okay, and Pete, you don't think this is cheesy, do you? And they want you to say, yes, I do.
Well, no, it'll be like, I'm thinking of, I did a show and they're like, oh, so this character is like really touchy. You know what I mean? So like, it's just kind of like how maybe she is as a person. And so like in a lot of scenes, she'll be touchy with another character. And it's like, we just don't like it. And I'm like, well, why don't you just tell her? You know what I mean?
They want you to direct the actors to.
And you want me to like make this thing stop happening, that to the point of this larger conversation, you guys should be maybe having that feedback with the person. But no one wants not even the confrontation. They don't even want to embark upon the act of noting. You know what I mean? And so then it's left to us to kind of, think about if we want to take that on, because I've also been in positions where that thing that they're asking you to do is a huge, huge, huge thing that they don't make clear to you. And you go in and you say, hey, can you like maybe not do this in that take? And they blow up on you because they've been getting nagged about it for the whole season. And no one's ever said specifically, we don't like that. So I'm basically campaigning for this whole conversation to be subscribed to across the industry and people to be more direct.
Well, the crazy thing about actors, sorry, Matt, but is that because they're on camera, it's okay if your gaffer is kind of grumpy or a DP is pissed off at you, But if your actor is like having an existential crisis or is just so pissed off and they're supposed to be like this lovely, bubbly character, but you just piss them off, that might have some repercussions because you were too honest with them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I Pete, I wonder, not to put you on the spot, but do you think that there's a correlation? We can cut this out if it's not okay. Do you think there's a correlation between the status of an actor and the threshold for tolerating, something like not knowing their lines or a fear around mentioning the acting tick that they've been doing that no one likes, right?
Absolutely. I think, and you can keep that in. I think you've nailed it. You've nailed it. Like there's just, I mean, look, there's the understanding perhaps that like this show is only happening because of this person.
Sure.
There's the, I would almost err on the fact that like, I think that people are reluctant to have real conversations. They're scared of confrontation and are making something a confrontation when it may not be. And then there's just the aura. Like there's something too. I share this with like when I was a producing director and I'd talk to directors about the show that they were on that I was working on. And I'd be like, look, you're going to give a note to this person and they're going to look at you crazy, but they're not looking at you crazy. It's just their face while they process.
They just have
what I mean?
RC, resting crazy face.
Resting crazy face. So like, if you like, so just, I don't care. You figure out how you got to do that. What I do is I give the note and I walk away. I'm not going to be there for the face.
Sure.
Because it has an impact on me too. I'm like, fuck you looking at me like that for? So like, but if we all are like saying, because of my fear of what this might be, I'm not ever going to broach whatever topic, then now you just almost create something that's elevated and not real because you're making them out to be even worse than they are or more challenging than they are.
Yeah.
And now that's just the legend of this actor.
Sure.
It's not often not the case.
But I think the underlying thing in all of the things we're talking about is status and how you use that status, right? Like if we're talking about a star, someone who's higher status than us, who creates a situation where it feels as though you're not allowed to give them an adjustment or make a suggestion or pull them aside to, let them know about something, then that can snowball, right? It's easy for us to give suggestions to people or notes to people when that's the job for most of the people on the set for us. Most of the time we're be able to say like, hey, DP, this is what we need to be doing, or don't hit your vape on a Zoom meeting or whatever it may be. But I think that's the complicated balance with all of this, right? Like a studio executive could be like, hey, Oren, don't make so many jokes or something. I got roasted pretty good on this last job for using my podcasting mic on like a few client calls. Yeah, like if people are just like, "Oh, hey, the guy with the mic," like a lot.
And they but it's cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
I always, when people are like, "Oh, you have a podcast mic," I'm like, "Yeah, I have a podcast too. You should listen to it."
Yeah.
And then I just pretend that I'm interviewing them.
Yeah. The sign off's always a little awkward. The Patreon plug.
Yeah.
Can I throw one quick thing in though?
Yeah, of course.
I would say like, and it's part of like I don't know. I feel like it's my own director homework. I try and make sure that I like do have those awkward conversations or that I am honest with the actor, because what you'll find is they're actually often looking for that honesty and they don't get it. And so the fact that you, out of however many directors this season or the whole show come up and do that, you might turn around and find that they're going to be like, Oren was great, because you walked up and said, hey, I got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing this thing and it feels
you're doing
like
the thing
this
with the
to
tongue.
me.
Why the tongue? Yeah.
And that's your job and you gotta walk toward it. You can't cower from it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. My wife is an actor and her biggest pet peeve, I think, is like when people try to like outsmart or trick an actor, like when they're not trying, like they're smart people, they're well trained. If you just say like, hey, you're doing the thing with your tongue, they have the training to figure out how to turn that into whatever results you're looking for. Just say it.
Yeah.
Just say it.
I know. Sometimes instead of saying, maybe a little less smug and a little more refined, you should just say like, can you not move your eyebrows as much?
Yeah.
It might be a quicker
100%.
way to get there.
100%. Yeah.
And the actors will be like, yeah, I cannot move my eyebrows. And now I understand the direction that you're giving me.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to, before we wrap up the honest feedback thing, I wanted to just flip the script for a second and ask, because obviously we're all directors and usually on set people more or less listen to us or care about our opinion. But have you guys been in situations where you've gotten the honest feedback? Because I've been in a lot of those situations, and every time it kind of works the same way. I get really sensitive. I get super offended. The other day, I like lost a job and I probably texted like 5 director friends, and I'm including Matt. And I was like, Matt, I just lost this job because the client thinks that this other guy has a better reel than me. Come on, look at his reel. Look at my reel. Like how could anyone think his reel is better than my reel? Like I was like so shocked. Yeah. But I've had probably my best example. The best honest feedback is feedback that you get that people don't realize you're hearing, you know, because that's when they're the most honest. And I might have told the story on the podcast before. I've definitely told it to Matt, but I was up for this job for a commercial and they were talking to a few different directors and they had a spreadsheet that had all the locations and actors and all these things. I was like, you know, Google Sheets, and they sent me the link once I got the job. And it had all the tabs, you know, it's like locations, cast, wardrobe, props. And the last tab was directors. Ooh. And I clicked on that tab and it had a list of like 10 directors or something that they talked to and some notes from the team at the agency. And there was a note by my name that said, I understand we've already offered him the job, but looking at his website, his stuff is just not funny. And it's a pretty bad look for someone to be trying so hard and still not be funny. It's a little bit of a red flag. And I obviously was like incredibly offended and hurt.
Sure.
And then I had to go that afternoon after reading that note to Location Scout where this guy was at that made this note. Wow. And of course I was trying to be super nice to him. Like, what's your background? And trying to be cool around him, which I was probably acting weird, if I'm honest. And then we had to do the whole shoot together. And I was like, should I say something? Should I say that I saw that note? Should I not say it? And in the end, I didn't say anything. And I think that was the right move. But about a month later, I was having coffee with a producer. I've told this story a million times. He mentioned that there were some things on my website that I had. I did this spot with Selena Gomez. It was not good. I made it many years ago, but it's Selena Gomez. So I thought, I'll keep this in here. And I had a couple other things. I did this thing with Harrison Ford. It wasn't like comedic, but it had some funny moments. And he's like, you have all this stuff on your website that's like, you're billing yourself as a comedy director and it's not that funny. And so it was like the triangulation of like this one guy not even knowing that I'm saying this note, plus this producer very gently giving me a little feedback that made me change my entire website. And it kind of like changed my whole career trajectory, literally just from these 2 pieces of honest feedback. One, that this guy does not even know that I received that. He didn't even intend it for me. And so that's an example of like, yes, my feelings were really hurt. Yes, I kind of hated that guy, but ultimately it made me a better filmmaker and a better business person in the way that I present myself.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the reasons I really have this appreciation for honest feedback, And some people, you might say like, oh, I applied to Sundance, or I applied to the DGA director's mentorship that you're part of, and I didn't even make it to the second round. And it's like that's a type of feedback, Sure. And I emailed the woman that runs it, and I was like, can you give me some feedback? And she's like, nope.
Who are you? And no.
Yeah. She's like, just apply again next year. Talk to some TV directors. Maybe they'll give you some tips. But I don't know. I guess have you guys been on that? Because it is hurtful to get that type of feedback, but it is helpful too.
Yeah.
You can say no. You guys have never gotten any.
I think, well, no, certainly. I think people get negative feedback in the form of rejection all the time, right? Like we don't get jobs all the time, for sure. I think it's kind of a unique circumstance to like essentially overhear meaningful negative feedback. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's every time I don't get a job, I'm like, hey, I would love to know why I didn't get the job, And I'd say like 4 out of 5 times the reasoning feels like a lie to me, But 1 out of 5, it actually is helpful. And it's like, hey, you do this weird thing on calls where you drink a 2-liter Coke during a call.
I think it's been not you. You know what I mean? Like even if it's like a vibe check, like there are people who are like, yo, Pete was cool. There are people who be like, Pete was too cool. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
And
I get that problem a lot too.
You can't like
all the time.
You can't do anything about it. I love that you had that opportunity to read that tab, and like I wish you would have not confronted him, but asked him about it. Because that would have been. He might have told you what you heard a month later from the other director, or I'm sorry, from the other person.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I should be like, hey, I updated my website. Is it better now? Like, there's no version of it that doesn't sound like a little passive aggressive,
I think the tricky thing is that he didn't say it out loud. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like if he had said it to your face or in an email, even if he'd hedged it a little bit more, if it was just like, hey, you're just really not our taste, our sensibilities don't match, right? Like that's the coded way of saying, I don't think
Mhm.
you're funny, right?
Yeah.
Like,
We went in
right.
another direction.
yeah, sure. I think you could have a conversation about it. That it was like an utter accident that you got that.
Right.
It makes it feel weird in a way that opens a can of worms. I don't know. Do you agree, Pete? Maybe not.
I was gonna say you also would have been doing him a favor, which that never would have happened again after.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And he would have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
like, John, don't ever, send the tabs without.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's I take. So I had a thing with a line producer where the vibe was just really weird when I showed up, and I discovered why. It was clear why, and part of me wanted to be like, that wasn't really the best foot to get off on for us. That was a weird way to kind of have your first phone call with me. And I didn't end up doing it because I kind of sussed it out when we met, and I was kind of pretty cold. Yeah. Hi. You know what I mean? Like, and then he apologized like on day 2 because he knew, he could tell like it was not, he had not done the best thing. But, every time I'm often like, and it's the same crossroads I just mentioned, like, I do really feel like, I don't know, man. I kind of want, I don't have to be the only one to feel uncomfortable. You know what I'm
100%.
saying?
Yeah.
Like, so like, I do get to respond in kind, not in an arrogant or like violent or aggressive way, but like, you did a thing that made me feel this way. So, I get to actually be a person and have a fucking appropriate response to the way you made me feel, because you didn't have to do what you did. And now I'm doing it. I'm acknowledging it and addressing it in a much better way than you did. And there will be some people who walk away from that like that, and they won't care how nice you were. They'll still say you were the angry black dude, and that's fine too. But what I do notice time and time again is that all the people whose opinion you're going to care about are going to be like, yeah, he was an asshole. So like you're not going to end up wearing that. In thinking about your like feedback thing, I'll be specific. So the last DGA contract negotiation for streaming, like premium streaming shows and cable or whatever, added this new thing where like after you handed in your director's cut, you had 24 hours and then you would get notes from like the showrunner about your episode. And so this is a first. So I get the feedback from the showrunners on you, and I had done a oneer for the first scene. And the first line in this document was like, we understand this is all the coverage you have.
And was it?
Yes. I was like, well, there's 17 versions of it because I did it 7 before I got it right. But I was like, oh my God, like I had never been face to face with that. Like, I'm sure like that happens.
But they know that you're going to do a oneer.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was gonna ask
Don't
you.
you show them like
Right.
a shot list or something before you go to set?
No.
I don't do that anymore.
Was that your first episode of you though?
It was my third.
Okay.
But
So
like,
you'd done the show before.
I had done the show before, but like now, like in the beginning years, I would show everybody everything to make them relax and feel like I had it under control. And now I kind of like, I got this. You'll see, like, and if there's anything crazy, I'll pitch it. But like,
But you must tell the AD and the DP, like, this is the plan, right?
yeah,
Sure, but they're not the ones giving that.
But they're not telling the showrunner, like, oh, we're doing a oneer.
Yeah.
So like that was crazy because I read it and like my heart sank. I was like, oh my God, like, do they like hate me? But then, at the end of the day, like I also have to trust the approach that I have and kind of remember that sometimes we're all looking at it through our lens. Like there's a world where writers are looking at it through more of the word lens and wanting a particular kind of complementary visual to the words. And then I'm looking at it from, here's the scene and everything that's happening. And this visual interpretation of the words, I think, is most visually interesting. And there's not always a handshake between the two, but, I'll die on the hill of like, once it's handed to the director, and if you're trying to make the same show and you're not doing it for like your reel, I think that an elevated visual take on a scene is what the audience needs once it's reached that final stage of production.
That's the point. Yeah. That's why why there's a director and like you don't just shoot standard coverage on everything. You know what I mean?
I will say I find that like every oneer has like its own life cycle, which is it always starts with like the director reading the script and being like, ooh, this would be a cool oneer. And then planning out the shots and then being like, yeah, I think it works as a oneer. And then going on set and figuring out, okay, well, we got to figure out a couple little parts of this, but more or less it's a great oneer. And then you're on set and you're excited and you're shooting it. And then just the Steadicam's not moving exactly the right speed and everything. And then you're like, okay, let's do another take. And you're on take 6, 7. You're like, okay, what coverage where do I put an insert and where do I put a wipe?
Just in
so I
case.
can cut 2 take. Yeah. And is this a little too long? And then you're on take 17 and your AD's like, dude, we're an hour behind. And you're like, okay, I guess maybe we should pick up something. And they're like, you're behind. Like, do you really need this extra shot? You said it was a oneer. And you're like, okay, it's a oneer then. And you move on, right? And then you're in the edit.
And they're like, if I only had a hand on a doorknob right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you put the oneer in and everyone's like, oh, that's a really long shot. And then you're editing the whole rest of the episode. And you're starting to think like, okay, we shot 4K or 8K or whatever. Can we do a punch in? And can we do this? And can we do a post wipe? Can we cut like 10 seconds out of this part? And then like, you're starting to do the sound, and like, you're like, this isn't really working. And then at some point it is working. And then the music comes in and then everything just kind of ultimately gels together because you left no other choices than to make it work. And then maybe there's a tiny little speed ramp somewhere or something, but ultimately the sound and the entire rest of the episode saves this oneer. And then everyone's like, wow, you're a freaking genius.
Yeah,
that oneer is perfect.
Cool oneer.
Nothing else would have made sense there.
I like that story. I hope that's how it ends for everyone always.
Yeah. I mean, or they just cut it. I remember Matt did a oneer on a football field with Deb. That was like 48 seconds for a 15-second commercial.
It wasn't, but
sorry for a different day. Well, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Oneers are cool.
Oneers are cool.
No, they're very cool.
This whole conversation makes me think of an anecdote that I'd love your takes on. It's a slightly different thing where I was working with this team and there was a person with a reputation and I hadn't met them. The creative was kind of going back and forth and iterating. And you just kind of hear murmurs of like, boy, it's kind of just the problem is this one person. And then just pushing back on everything, anytime there was a tweak or an adjustment or a refinement, it was just kind of always outlandish sort of requests, always ended up coming in and in and in. And finally, when we got to the shoot, it occurred to me that like, it was mostly fine. And it was just a bad reputation. Do you know what I mean? And like, yeah, they're like a little zany or whatever, but like we were all on the same team and maybe probably a little inexperienced in terms of like, there's stuff you can write and there's stuff that you can pitch. And we kept telling you that it should be, half as long or whatever. But then when they're there and they realize, oh, that's how long it takes, we all get to that destination together. And they weren't ever mean or whatever, just again, like a little kooky. And it's kind of the opposite thing where we all were pretty honest of like, hey, we need to change these things or it's going to create problems for our shoot. People said that over and over and over again, and there was just constant pushback. Have you guys ever experienced a person like that? Do you know what I mean? Like it's like they're chaotic but good natured. Like well-meaning.
I mean, I think half the like celebrities I've worked with, everyone's like, oh, they're a handful.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, they were actually like they like for you to be prepared.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't like when you waste their time. But if you are doing your job right, then I mean, I've had that. But yeah, I've also worked with a lot of horrible people.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that I what you've tapped into, I think though, is like when you said, it's probably a little bit of an experience. It's probably a little bit of personality. Like you've got this responsibility to be a bit of a psychologist as a director. And if you can tap into whether you can deduce it or find out like explicitly like what the issue is, it'll do great things for you. And I mean, I think with actors too, I've dealt a lot with like, I'm just thinking of anecdotes that popped to my mind, but I remember like one actress really being upset about like being pregnant in a show because I kind of later learned or what I was told.
Was pregnant or
the character,
okay.
yeah. And it was like, well, the show had been sold to her as like, yeah, you're going to start with these kids, but we're not going to give you any more. And then they fucking made her pregnant. And she's like, what we fucking talking?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Defined by motherhood, and that
exactly. And I'm this age, and I'm cool having them already, but I don't want to have a whole season of being like pregnant, and then and being viewed as a mom again in through a brand new lens. And I was like, I feel that shit. You know what I mean? So like, I could understand it, but like, the thing that's really, I think, most challenging is when the requests are like, and I've yet to deal with it, but I know people who have directly, where it's like, yeah, you got 2 takes. It's like, damn, like no matter what, you know what I mean? Like no matter what the nature of the scene, you got 2 takes, and I'm done at noon.
Oh, wait, this is something that an actor will tell you as the director.
Oh yeah, and you're like,
2 takes,
and I'm like, that's
you're
just.
like,
I wish you
bring
had
in the stand-in. Let's work out the camera move. There's a million things before we ask.
And that just feels like that should be on a case-by-case basis. Like, I understand you don't want to ever waste your time, but sometimes, like, to me, you're only making what you're going to be doing not look as great as it could. But then you probably don't care, because it'll be fine if you're just in coverage with a single.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I don't know if that answered, but.
Have you worked with actors? Like, isn't there some legend? I forget that some actress was like, mess up the wide shot so that they cut to your close up.
Oh, that's a good strategy, though. That's very smart.
I like it.
Actoring.
Yeah. I mean, it's different, but I did work at Ellen for a while, and the expectation was like, get it right the first time.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Well, that's a good expectation.
Yeah.
I will say one tip, and I bet everyone already knows this, but if you're trying to get honest feedback on your own work and everyone's not giving you honest feedback, like what I find helps is when I ask people to compare my work to my other work. For instance, on my, I direct primarily commercials recently, and on my website, I have 14 commercials, and sometimes I'll direct something new and I'll ask a trusted friend, like, hey, I want to put this new commercial on my website. Which one should I take off? And first of all, it'll get me some feedback on whether the new one is even better than any of these other 14. But sometimes you can just like open the floodgates. Well, this one is kind of messed up here, and the music on this one is kind of cheesy, and this is kind of like looks old. And it's like a good way, and they don't feel as bad giving you that feedback because you're just replacing it with something else you directed.
Right. That's smart.
So that's kind of like my little hack for getting honest feedback about my work, is asking people, or even saying to someone like, hey, we're going to have one more shoot day. Like, do you think I should reshoot any of these scenes or something? And see if people will be like, yeah, this is probably the weakest scene.
You made me realize also, all of my most hard-hitting feedback, I think, is about writing. And I think that people just feel, maybe to our earliest point, like we all know how easy it is to rewrite something. And so they're not precious about,
being harsh.
And actually, now that I think of it, also the most prescriptive, and I'll even maybe say harsh feedback we got on my wife's movie, See You Next Christmas, was from an editor turned director, Jody McVeigh-Schultz, who's at South by Southwest right now with a film. Shout out Jody. But I think it came from that thing of like, he knows that you can fix it. Do you know what I mean? So like, if you internally understand that what you're suggesting is possible to fix based on your own experience, I think it gives people license to like let it rip a little bit more,
Yeah.
Sounds like we should just not give anyone any feedback.
No.
Or the other way around.
I think
Pete, you're opening my eyes. I feel like I have been too conflict averse. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you're, I'm like, no, just say it. Be a person, like, don't suffer through it. Cause you're right. It does cost us takes, and it does cost us time and reputation points, all that stuff. Yeah.
A good why goes a long way too.
Sure.
If I found if somebody's doing something crazy, I'd be like, hey man, like, why are you acting like that? Like, tell me, explain it. You know what I mean? Like, and oftentimes, that can pull the air out of it. I'm just trying to understand why this is happening right now. Cause the point of this meeting was this, and now we're in a whole other arena. And I understand something's changed for you, or see something's changed for you, but I don't understand what. So can you tell me and bring me up to speed? And half the time people just want to be heard. I can't say that I'm sure there have been a couple people along the way where I've been like, yo, I thought I would be the one to figure them out and I wasn't,
Sure.
But like overwhelmingly, like there's always something where you're like, that's what's going on here. Like, they're leaving you out of the information loop. And that's why you came at me like this, because you're not really upset about the fact that I'm arriving later than you thought for this shoot. You're upset that I was given the go ahead to do this 3 weeks ago and you just found out the day before I'm supposed to.
Sure.
So you unfortunately are not able to quite filter the fact that you should be normal with me and take this shit to them.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, that's still giving people grace, but there's always a reason.
Well, cool. I think overall feedback is good. Honest feedback is better. Give some to someone, get some from someone. And on that note, Pete, do you have a minute to do an unpaid endorsement with us?
Unpaid endorsements.
So my unpaid endorsement is kind of like a two-parter, but the broad idea is how fun it is to see filmmakers' first films, especially when they've got like a long catalog. Specifically, She's Gotta Have It is on Netflix, I think for a little bit longer. And I had never seen it before. I was on a plane. I was like, oh, it's like 86 minutes. It's a little awkward to watch on a plane because there's a lot of sex in it. But otherwise,
You're like,
I did skip a little bit. Yeah. It was on my phone. But anyway, you could, because you can download on Netflix.
Spike Lee's first movie?
It's Spike Lee's first movie. And it was so fun to watch because it's pretty low budget, but not all of his DNA, but you see, he's a main character in it. He's doing some cool sort of like, experimental things. It starts with like photos and like there's direct address to camera and all this fun stuff. Like you could see like a young man figuring himself out in a way that's really exciting. It's really
1986.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, right. Like this is when like those films were the things that got me excited about independent film, like that era. And I was like, oh, just watching the first film from somebody like that is awesome. So that's really my big, She's Gotta Have It is great, but especially if you have like a relationship to a filmmaker and haven't seen their first film.
I do wonder if
that's it.
I mean,
yeah.
Spike Lee has such like vibe and energy and stuff. I do wonder if you watch like Ron Howard's first film or someone who's like a little more of a chameleon.
I think you do. Yeah. But also think about like, like Man Inside or something. It's like Spike's done like big studio movies that aren't so Spike Lee, but still have that in like you could still kind of tell, you know what I mean? But so it's interesting to see what he carries through all of his work. It's also nice when somebody's made so many movies. So like, that's cool too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Pete, what you got?
That's really good. It's funny. That's like, that kind of dovetails into what I'm going to mention, which is, I don't know if you guys know Brian Burgoyne, but he's a
DP, right?
Yeah, he's a DP.
He went to AFI, I think, right?
He did. And I just worked with him on Grosse Pointe Garden Society.
Oh,
and
cool.
He was really great, super fast, super creative, super good, great ability to navigate go up and down between crew and like executives and showrunners. But he was like, oh, you got to listen to this podcast called What Went Wrong. And I don't know do you know it, Oren?
The filmmaking podcast.
It's a filmmaking podcast. And basically,
I've never heard it, but I've heard of it.
Every episode is about, either some great film or some film that's not so great, but like all the behind the scenes shit that happened. So they did do the right thing. They did. I've listened to that, Die Hard, Sixth Sense, Godfather Part 1 and 2.
Wait, so what went wrong on like the Sixth Sense?
Oh, well, first of all, what pops into my mind right now is like Toni Collette was like up for Bringing Out the Dead and that movie. And she was pissed when she got M. Night Shyamalan's movie because it had been sold to her as like this Disney movie with Bruce Willis. And the fact that it was even a Disney movie has a whole backstory, and even the release date has a whole backstory because it was like the year of like kind of horror films like Stigmata and stir of echoes and all these things were happening. And like, they dropped that movie in August as like a, fuck it. And then it made like, you know, it went on to make $650 million worldwide. And, you know, M. Night,
so good
contract where he was tethered to Miramax, but the only way he could get out was if he wrote something to direct and made them have to hire him. And it's just really, for anyone out there that's a filmmaker, you listen to it and you're like, this is what I'm going through is not, it may be unique to me, but it's not unique to the journey. And it's like super, like it really gets you like going and like you really realize.
Where do they get the stories from? Like, how do they know what went wrong?
So like we were just listening to Shakespeare in Love. And so they pulled a lot from Ed Zwick's book, which is really good too. But like, the two, I think it's a husband and wife, and they do a hell of a lot of research to compile all of this information from different books and interviews. And they just give it back to us with commentary. So it's super good. It's the only podcast I've been listening to when I'm not catching up on the world's demise.
Sure. Yeah.
Dude, the DP, so sorry, I just looked at Brian Burgoyne. He did go to AFI and he shot the Tim and Eric show, Tim and Eric Awesome Show or whatever it's called. The DPs on that show are him, Benjamin Berman, who's actually been on our podcast as a director, John Goulis, who's like a DP friend of mine that shot like Cocaine Bear and like a million TV shows, Crashing and all that. Or not Crashing, I forget, a show with a very similar name. Jason Oldak, have you worked with him, Pete?
On Unprisoned, like 3 times.
Yeah. And Jeffrey Waldron, who also shoot like, it's like they're all became kind of these huge TV DPs. And you know who shot their feature was Rachel Morrison. And all of them are in the same class at AFI, which is pretty crazy. Because
Jeff Walden's a USC guy.
He went to AFI for grad school. No? I'm pretty sure I met him through AFI. No? Okay. I
don't know him that well, but he went to USC. That's how I know.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe
but it's a show famous for like looking kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And I think they kept firing DPs because they were making it look too good.
They wanted to make it look too good. Yeah. I remember, I think we've even told the story on the show. Yeah. Like Jeff, like they wouldn't let him level the tripod.
Yeah. No, they keep firing DPs and having like the interns shoot the show instead.
They put a Sharpie over the bubble.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. What went wrong? I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. That's great.
I have 2. One is incredibly stupid, but I'm just saying it in case somebody doesn't know this, but I feel like avocados have like this really bad rap that like you buy them and then they're not edible. You have to wait a few days until they're ripe. And then if you miss that day, you have to throw them away, right? They're overripe. And everyone's like, oh, avocados suck.
No one has ever said avocados suck.
But you know that once your avocado is ripe, you can just put it in the fridge and it'll just stay. It locks in that level of ripeness for like a couple of weeks. So I don't know. In case you didn't know that. If you don't want to use an avocado and it's ripe, just put it in the fridge. You can use it tomorrow or the next day or next week.
Do you know how you can tell if they're ripe besides just squeezing them?
No, that's not what I do.
If the little nubbin comes out, if like that just kind of has fallen out or comes out really easily, like the little part of the stem. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I'll try that. My other thing is also a podcast episode. This amazing podcast called Song Exploder. We've probably talked about it in the past. It's this awesome podcast. And it's this guy that basically takes, I think, people's Pro Tools sessions. Like he'll have like Lorde or Billie Eilish or like, you know, some like famous Beatle or something on, and they'll take the Pro Tools session of a very famous song and they'll just go track by track and be like, how'd you come up with this beat? How'd you come up with these lyrics? How'd you come up with this melody? And they just dissect it. The episodes are really short, like 20 to 25 minutes. And then at the end, they'll play the song. And it's this great kind of analysis of music. But they did an episode recently where they had the composer of Severance on. The Severance, I mean, he does the whole show, but they took the theme song of Severance and they just talked about how he worked with Ben Stiller to come up with this composition. And he has this whole thing about temp music. He's like super anti-temp music, like most composers are. And he says like every job, basically his deal is that he basically tells the director and the editor, like, you're not allowed to use temp music. And in exchange, I'll compose a huge library of music for you guys before you start editing.
Yeah.
And he just talks about how he'll just go to Ben Stiller and show him like play a couple options and just how he thinks Ben Stiller has such good instincts that just seeing him react to his music makes the music better. Mm-hmm. And it's just a really fascinating composer to director relationship that he talks about. And aside from that, the music and the reasoning behind it, and even some of the sounds that end up being really important in that show. come from stuff that this composer was like messing around with. So Song Exploder Severance episode. If you guys like that show, it's a really great episode. So that's it. Well, Pete, thanks so much for coming back on the pod. If people want to find out more about you, what should they do? Instagram, website?
Instagram is great. Thank you for having me. First of all, you could go to my Instagram, which is at Pete Chatmon, PeteChatmon. And you could check out PeteChatmon.com, and you could, link to the podcast from there, link to the book, link to merch, and, watch my reel, which needs to be updated.
What's the name of your book again? Remind me.
Transitions, A Director's Journey and Motivational Handbook.
And it's about transgender mice? Is that
Yes,
true?
transgender mice and the millions of dollars that have been funneled to them. Yeah.
$8 million. I heard it cost you $8 million to write that book, Transgender Mice. That's awesome. Well, yeah, congrats on all the stuff. We're always obviously very excited to see your name in the credits of our favorite TV shows.
Man, and hats off to you. I would say one day I'll catch up to you, but I think you'd have to stop for like 5 years for me to have a shot. But I love what you do with the podcast.
Put out an episode every day. Yeah,
and the banter and vibe is great, man. So keep supplying us with great stuff to learn from and enjoy.
Awesome, thanks. If you guys want to supply us with your thoughts, you can email us at justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can find us across all social media at justshootitpod. I'm on Instagram at okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow. This episode was edited by Kevin O. Yang, thanks Kevin, and produced by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jizza. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Goodbye.